So, Kirsten, you're not going to believe this. I used to have long hair. I had a beard. I was 23 in 1969. I was 23 in 1969. Didn't quite make it to Woodstock, but tried. So you might get the picture. So there's empathy here. But now that I'm mature and a senator and almost 75, but you brought up a very interesting point that I hope that the others can answer, and that was the age under 18, and the whole idea of being charged with an indictable offense. And what I think this is a catalyst of what we're trying to deal here. When you ask the question, do I risk a criminal record or risk potential harm, because it's handed over to somebody under 18, and the person 18 plus doesn't get anything. Could somebody perhaps tell me how do we get around that? I mean, in either amending this piece of legislation, would you have a viewpoint, either Grace, Daniel, or the gentleman from BC, and yourself, Kirsten? I think this is a real key issue, because some have talked about pardons or amnesty or dealing with it in terms of sitting around and having a conversation saying, you did it this time, but don't do it the next time. I don't know. It just seems that it's a very double standard. Anybody?
Comment on that.
Well, I'll take Daniel first.
Sure.
Okay, Danielle. First.
I think one of the things to look at is that one of the things we've suggested is education programs being the first rule, right? Like not having penalties or punishments being the de facto opportunity, but instead looking at how do we have conversations with people, send them to diversion programs, whatever those look like, education programs, those being the de facto, that young people, I think someone on the earlier panel, or might have been one of the senators, said that we did a bad job of educating young people. And I think part of that is because when we educate young people from a place of fears and harm, fear tactics and harm-based information, they stop listening. They stop listening and they don't believe anything that people say. Governments, educators. So if we start with education and start with education for people who are given those penalties, then that takes away from this criminalization. And I think that's really important for young people, because I think it's true. If you're 18 plus a day, you're able to have 30 grams. If you're 18 less a day, you're only able to have 5, or in Ontario, you're not allowed to have anything on you.
Check one thing in here for when you're further responding to this, because I think most people are saying, if it's a person, let's say in their 20s or 30s, that's giving to a kid underage, that is marketing, that is peddling this stuff to them, that there should be a heavy penalty for doing that. But what you're saying is if they're very close in age, a few days apart maybe even, it doesn't seem like it should be the same penalty. But where do you draw the line then? How do you figure out, I guess you have to do it on the facts of the case, but anyway, you can further respond. Grace Costa?
I was going to say, within the context of the shelter, it's so problematic, right? Because I have 16-year-olds with 24-year-olds who are friends. So, and within the context of their personal lived experiences. So for me, I think you're the one who brought up restorative justice. So I'm thinking, why are we not looking more at that as a way of dealing with an 18-year-old, for instance, who might be giving a 16-year-old in the shelter that, as opposed to the criminal charge that now becomes an additional barrier. So I think for me, that would be the key. I would love to look at what would restorative justice look like in those cases. And when it was mentioned that we should leave it up to the police to determine this, I can tell you right now that at EVAS, about 80% of our youth are black. And I guarantee that for most of their interactions with the police, they're not going to be given the benefit of the doubt. And so we cannot forget that.
Out of time, but if you have a quick comment, Kristen, and also Connor Fesenmeyer, that would be fine.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's basically the whole argument is that if you're over 18, you're responsible and all that. I know a lot of people who are like 35, 40, who are very immature, and they're less mature than some of the 16, 17-year-olds I know, just because if you're 16, 17 going into a shelter, there's a reason you're going into a shelter at that age. You're not just deciding one day, I'm going to go live in a shelter instead of living with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whoever you're living with. There's a reason, and you've been through a lot. Like, you don't have to be old to have a lot of life experience. You can be young and live a full life in just a short amount of time. And I feel that if, say you're getting someone who's like 20 years old giving weed to someone who's 16 years old, that 16-year-old may have more life experience and more traumas and all that compared to that 20-year-old. And it just goes to show that it's like, I've helped educate my younger friends because they look to me as like, hey, like, you're about my age, like, you've been smoking for a while, like, what can I ask you that they don't want to ask the staff, or they don't want to ask other agencies. So I feel that, like, being able to ask someone your age, or even just get it from someone your age, because the whole point is they're not going to be able to go into the stores anyways to get it. They're going to get it illegally. And, like, I'd rather give my friends some weed knowing that I got it from a safe source, rather than knowing that they're out on some street corner or in an alley somewhere getting it from an unreputable source.
Thank you. Connor, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I honestly do not believe for a second legalization is going to completely, or even in some part, get rid of the black market. It's only going to change their target. Instead of targeting everyone, they're going to specifically switch to youth. So you're going to look at both competitive prices, because it's extremely easy to grow a plant in your house and sell it. So someone's going to easily do that, give it to youth, and you can't really keep track of that. They're just going to completely shift their market. And when they grow up in their home, they're just going to do the same thing. Take that and sell it, and then potentially mark it up because you can't get it at another store. And if you're getting a bootleg, regardless of who you're getting it from, youth to youth, adults to youth, it's from a younger person to an older person, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. If someone's giving it to someone underage, as defined, that there shouldn't be any clarification or gray area. You're consciously giving drugs to somebody underage who is not supposed to have those drugs. Now, I don't from a decriminalization aspect, those people who have possession of it shouldn't be charged, but passing it off someone underage regardless shouldn't be. And from the root of it, this is a public health concern. I think that's kind of overlooked in my initial speech, is that this whole aspect of this is people don't know what they're getting into, especially kids, and by anyone giving it to them, they're taking advantage of a youth that's just simply unaware of the health concerns of marijuana.
Okay, we're out of time.